LVMH is the largest and most powerful luxury brand empire in the world, owned by Bernard Arnault. Bernard Arnault has been buying up shares and taking over luxury brands since well before 1989. If you want to know exactly how he built this luxury empire and made it so massive, this video will tell you everything you need to know. It's seriously impressive. Support this LVMH luxury empire video, how the world's biggest luxury brand kills off old businesses to create new ones, by scanning this QR code. Or if you want to support the Side Money Motor channel, it's super easy. Just hit like, share, or save it to watch later. You can also drop a comment to chat with us. But what I'd love most is for you to hit subscribe. Just press it once, no need to do it again. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so you won't miss our next video. Thank you. Bernard Arnault is someone who often appears on the list of the world's richest people, but he doesn't always stay at the top for long, since there are others who surpass him. The reason he's ever been the richest person in the world is because he owns the LVMH empire, the largest luxury brand conglomerate in the world. LVMH has already swept up about 70% of the world's luxury brands, as you can see in this chart. And right now, the value of LVMH is it's huge, worth up to $350 billion. And when I say it's big now, it was even more massive at its peak. In 2023, just after the COVID period, LVMH's company value almost hit $500 billion. The biggest luxury brand in LVMH, as everyone knows, is Louis Vuitton. If you want to know the history of Louis Vuitton, I've already made a video about it, so go check it out. Besides Louis Vuitton, there are also other major brands like Dior. Yes, like Tiffany, Bulgari, and so on, right? When you look at this list, you might think, hey, shouldn't Hermès be here too? But it's not. So did Bernard Arnault want Hermès to be under the LVMH umbrella? He did. He tried before, but it didn't work out. I'll talk about that in this video too. As for Bernard Arnault's methods, let me tell you, he's been ruthless from the very beginning. But let me start from the beginning. Bernard actually grew up in a family that had nothing to do with fashion at all. Bernard's family business was a construction company called Ferret-Savenol. Bernard himself graduated from École Polytechnique, which is a top engineering school in France. But actually, the family business wasn't directly his own family's. It belonged to his father-in-law. When Bernard started helping manage the company, he worked there for about 3 years, until 1974. Then, Bernard persuaded the company's CEO, who was his father-in-law, and said, at that time, the construction business wasn't really making much profit, so he suggested that they should shift the company to focus on real estate instead. That was the first time Bernard said that if something wasn't making enough money, he was ready to kill it off. Just get rid of it. Don't keep it around. So he moved on to fully commit to the real estate business, which he did for a long time, over several generations, until he got bored and lost interest. And after he terminated his father-in-law's construction business, it seemed like Bernard, he would come to love this path. But after that, there was an event, a change in government, that affected Bernard Arnault's business. In 1981, François Mitterrand became the Prime Minister of France, and he had socialist economic policies. That meant the government would nationalize private companies and intervene in private businesses in various ways. This made ambitious young investors like Bernard Arnault unhappy. So he decided to move from France to the United States, leaving his business in the hands of his right-hand man. But then there was another turning point. In 1984, Boussac Saint Frères, a large textile company in France, was about to go bankrupt. But since France was under socialist rule at the time, they couldn't just let it fail. The government couldn't bail it out themselves either, so they had to announce that they were looking for private investors to step in and rescue the company. As soon as Bernard heard the news, he immediately flew back from America. He went to seek out investors to raise funds to buy out Boussac Saint Frères. When Bernard had gathered the money and presented the dowry to the government to take over Boussac Saint Frères, he promised the French government that he would take good care of the company and ensure that all the employees would have long-term jobs. But in reality, just 2 years later, Bernard Arnault terminated the employment of 9,000 employees from Boussac Saint Frères, which quickly earned him the official nickname, the Terminator. Bernard's actions stood in direct opposition to both the promises he made to the government and the socialist way of governance in France. The only thing he preserved was the capitalist approach. Profits always come first. After that, Bernard began his relentless and ruthless game of elimination. So after acquiring Boussac Saint Frères and Kenzo, Bernard sold off his father-in-law's real estate company without a second thought. He didn't care about the family business at all. Once he sold it, he turned his attention to Boussac Saint Frères, the new branch he had just acquired, and started figuring out what parts to cut. Anything that wasn't making money, he'd get rid of. After reviewing everything, Bernard ended up selling off almost all of Boussac Saint Frères' assets, keeping only a tiny portion, the luxury brand segment. But the thing is, he owned Dior and also a luxury department store called Le Bon Marché. And within just 3 years after Bernard started managing Boussac Saint Frères, which by then only had the luxury brand segment left starting from 1987, in just 3 years, the fashion business, which Bernard had never run before, made a profit of up to $112 million. And that's just the profit, because the total revenue was $1.9 billion. And after managing Boussac Saint Frères, Bernard immersed himself in another luxury brand, which was Louis Vuitton. At that time, Bernard's friend was Henri Racamire, the owner of Louis Vuitton back then. He wanted Bernard to help manage Louis Vuitton because, coincidentally, in 1987, Louis Vuitton had just started to become a global brand and had sold 1 million shares on the stock market at $63.63 per share. That was the year. Yes, that's when Louis Vuitton's revenue hit $1 billion. After Louis Vuitton entered the stock market and became a global brand, they joined hands with Moet Hennessy, a luxury beverage company that produces champagne and cognac. Together, they established a company called LVMH. Notice that. At first, Bernard Arnault was not involved as an owner at all. When Bernard Arnault was about to step in to help, basically, it was because Henry, the older of Louis Vuitton, and Alain Chevalier, the CEO of Moet Hennessy, didn't get along. So they wanted Bernard to come in and help sort things out and make everything run smoothly. At that time, there was also an economic crisis, the Black Monday crash in 1987. Bernard Arnault saw an opportunity in that crisis and made a lot of money when the market collapsed. He then used the money he made during that period to buy shares of Louis Vuitton. Quietly, he kept buying and buying until he owned 43% of the shares, eventually becoming the largest shareholder of Louis Vuitton. That was in July 1988. By the time Henri, the real owner of Louis Vuitton, realized what was happening, the company had already been taken over. Henri didn't have as many shares as Bernard Arnault had bought. Henri was furious and decided to take the matter to court, but in the end, he lost the case. And Bernard Arnault became the owner of Louis Vuitton. Henry was so upset that he resigned from Louis Vuitton altogether. Like, you're so good, you took over, now you run it yourself. I actually made a video about this, so go check it out if you want more details, the Louis Vuitton clip. After Henry, the original owner of Louis Vuitton, resigned from the brand, right? The following year, on January 6, 1989, Bernard Arnault went on to fire the president of Moet Hennessy, Alain Chevalier. He fired him from Moet Hennessy completely, which made Bernard Arnault the sole owner of LVMH, fully in charge. But honestly, Bernard Arnault didn't win every single battle. Like I mentioned before, Bernard Arnault actually wanted Hermès too, right? But the attempt Bernard made to take over Hermès didn't succeed. After he managed to take over LVMH, he used LVMH's subsidiaries to gradually buy shares of Hermès. Quietly, each time they bought no more than 5% of shares, so they wouldn't have to disclose shareholder information according to French law. They kept buying little by little like this for 10 years, until in 2010, Bernard Arnault's LVMH publicly announced that they now held 17.1% of Hermès shares. At that time, even the Hermès family members found out at the same time as the public, and everyone was really shocked. A warning was issued by a member of the Hermès family, saying that an intruder had now entered our garden, and we don't want them in our house. At that time, Patrick Thomas, the CEO of Hermès, publicly warned LVMH using very polite language, but it was still a scolding. He said, "If you want to win the heart of a beautiful woman, you probably wouldn't start by raping her from behind, right?" But how did Bernard react when he heard that? He didn't stop. Bernard kept buying Hermès shares until he owned as much as 22.6% of the company. You could say he was just a step away from being able to take over Hermès. But at that time, the Hermès heirs were very lucky. They realized what was happening just in time. They banded together and pooled all their shares to establish a company called Holding Hedge 51, which was a company that consolidated all the Hermès shares owned by the heirs. 50.2%, just barely over half, by only 0.2%. But that was enough for the Hermès heirs to be able to keep control of their shares. They all agreed and made a pact not to sell any Hermès shares for 20 years. At that time, the AMF, the French Financial Regulatory Authority, came to investigate and fined LVMH as well. The fine was as much as 13.2 million euros because LVMH bought Hermès shares to the point that it affected the stock price, but did not disclose this to the public. After that, LVMH didn't stop. In 2014, they managed to increase their stake in Hermès to 23.2%. However, the AMF intervened, so they had to agree to distribute their shares and also promised not to buy any more Hermès shares for the next 5 years. But after that, who knows what negotiations happened behind the scenes, because in 2017, LVMH agreed to sell all of their Hermès shares. So in the end, this time, LVMH, or Bernard Arnault, was not able to fully take over Hermès. That's why today, Hermès is the second largest luxury brand in the world, with a market cap of almost 230 billion euros. Its value has dropped quite a bit from its peak in 2023, just like LVMH. As I mentioned earlier, Bernard Arnault is like a Terminator, a corporate raider who goes after other people's businesses. But regardless of how he acquired LVMH, he's the one who managed to turn LVMH into the #1 luxury brand in the world. It took him only 11 years to increase LVMH's value by 15 times, and profits have also gone up 100%. And this is exactly the reason why I chose to share the story of Bernard Arnault in this video, because I'm interested in his management principles for running LVMH. Bernard Arnault himself has summed it up in just 2 main points. The first is that Bernard says the only way to manage a luxury brand group of this size is to decentralize power. Every brand must be able to have its own creativity and operate independently. Another important thing Bernard Arnault said that really struck me is this: if you, as a supervisor or business owner, overlook creative people, they'll stop producing outstanding work for you. If you have subordinates who are super creative, but you make your managers stand over them with a calculator, constantly checking if they're meeting KPIs and things like that, no one is going to come up with great ideas for you. In that kind of atmosphere, all the work just fizzles out. Organizations that are able to keep growing are the ones that value people who are ready to deliver good work and bring creativity to the table. That's why LVMH decentralizes power, and everyone does their own work, designing and creating under the guidance of an artistic director who keeps the brand's theme consistent and prevents it from going off track. That's it. Now, moving on to the second principle of management. LVMH, you see, the principle that Arnault uses to efficiently expand the LVMH empire is that you don't have to do everything yourself. If a new brand emerges and it's the winner, the strongest in its group, then just buy it. That way, you get people who are already experts, and you're sure you're getting something that's already proven to be a winner. This is what allows LVMH to raise capital to keep growing these smaller brands. And most importantly, for any brand, once it becomes part of LVMH, it's very hard for it to leave.